So we get a lot of veterans are confused about whose records were lost back in the early 70s and in the fire that happened. Can you kind of break that down a little bit? Which records, whose records? Do you know how many records?
The estimates are that between 16 and 18 million records were lost.
Oh, wow.
And it's generally speaking, it's the Army and Air Force records from World War II, Korea era. With the Air Force, the records were arranged alphabetically, so it's Hubbard through Z, where if your last name began with something before H, you might be lucky. The building in which the fire took place, we actually continued to occupy that building for many years after the fire. We moved out about 10 years ago. The building still stands today. It was originally built as a 6-story building. And the fire started on the 6th floor and took out the entire 6th floor. So as part of the recovery, the demolition crews removed the 6th floor and then restored all the systems in the building, and the building continued to function as a 5-story building for many, many years thereafter. We deal with a lot of records. First of all, there are a lot of records that were salvaged from the fire. So we've got a lot of records in our building that are brittle because they got water damage during the fire, and through the process of vacuum drying those records, they became very brittle. We've got a lot that have charred edges around them, so they have to be handled very carefully. A lot of times we will reproduce them in a preservation lab, and then our technicians will work off of a photocopy or a digitized copy of the record instead of working with the originals, because again, these are records that will be kept for the life of the Republic. And the records that were salvaged are kept in 2 special warehouse bays where the temperature and humidities are strictly controlled. Temperatures set at around 50 degrees in those bays. You got to wear a jacket if you're going to be working in there all day. It's cold, because that'll help ensure that the records are retained for the life of the Republic. When it comes to records that were lost, so we estimate about 80% of Army veterans World War II, Korea era, the records were lost. When the fire occurred, the government didn't just shrug its arms, shoulders, and say, "There's nothing we can do about this." Immediately they went to action, and they issued a requirement for all federal agencies across the government to stop the destruction of any records that could possibly be used to verify military service. And there was a working group created that identified series that could be used to reconstruct basic service and get those records to St. Louis. So records that might normally be kept for 7 years, like final payment vouchers, for example. Your last payment you got when you get out, it's got the date of your separation on there. It's got the character of your service on there. Those would normally be short-term records, but those were all collected and maintained in St. Louis. So what we do is if we search for, we receive a request and we don't have a record, and we recognized based on the branch's service and the time period involved that it was likely lost in the fire, then we try to reconstruct the basic service. And we're looking for 3 data points. We're looking for the entry date, the separation date, and the character of service. And if we can get those 3 data points, then we can issue a document. It's called the National Archives Form 13038 that can be used in lieu of a DD-214 to get whatever benefits that you're seeking. And we're usually able to do that. But a lot of times it's a function of the amount of information that we get from the requester. In some cases, what we'll do is if a request is received and we don't have a record, and we're not able to reconstruct, we will send a form back to the requester and ask for additional information. Like normally to request your military records, we're looking for the basics. What branch of service were you in? What was your service number or social? And usually that's enough. Maybe your date of birth will play into the equation. But for fire-related reconstruction, we might ask what units you were in. And then we'll use organizational records, morning reports, and unit rosters and follow you throughout your service to see if we can get your separation date, that sort of thing. So a lot of times our ability to reconstruct is going to be a function of the amount of information that we receive from the requester. And one of the challenges is that because of the age of those records, most of the requesters today are not the veterans themselves.
Right.
They're someone's looking for grandpa's record and nobody knows what his service number was. So what our staff will do is they'll use
I didn't even think of that. It's a totally different number.
Yeah, World War II, Korea,
yes.
yeah.
No Social Security number.
Right. So that would, the military switched to the Social Security numbers in the mid to late 60s.
Right.
Prior to that, you were assigned a unique service number. And if no one remembers that service number, one of the things we do is our staff has access to a lot of VA systems. VA is a tremendous partner in the work that we do. And what we'll do is we'll see if the veteran ever filed a claim, then we might be able to find that service number we can look up the social security number to find the claim. And then with that claim information, we can find the service number. Then we can use the service number to find the record. We also have some index cards, the VA index cards that were created at, back in the 40s and 50s that will give us that kind of information as well. So that's a lot of detective work to reconstruct the records, but we're normally successful.
But I guess my point is, if I served in Desert Storm, then the chances of my records being burned up in the fire are almost nil.
Right. So the fire was in 1973.
Right.
And there haven't been any since.
Right.
So if you got out after and actually, it's not like if you separated in 1973, it's not like your record arrived here the day you got out, right? Your field command would have sent it to your personnel command, and they would do some stuff to it, and eventually it would get into our building. So, really, it would be impossible if you got out after 73 for that record to have been lost in a fire. Now, one thing I will say, though, is generally speaking, Army, Air Force, World War II, Korea era, but there were office spaces on that 6th floor as well, office spaces for 200 employees. And they could have had records on their desk from Navy, Marine Corps. Okay. So those records weren't stored on that floor, but they could have been temporarily out of their file and on someone's desk.
Somebody used it,
lost. Right. And also on the floor that burned, the 6th floor, there was a vault for specially protected holdings. So, records that you'd be particularly embarrassed about if you screwed them up, right? Famous people. Also, it was a common practice and it still is today. I'm not a veteran, but my father was in the Army. Day one, when I start working there, they asked me if I have any immediate family who were veterans or if I'm a veteran. I say my father was a veteran. That record gets pulled. It gets put into that specially protected area. So I don't have access to my father's record. I can't make him a general when he wasn't.
That's interesting.
Nobody can get angry at me and take it out on my dad by tearing up, his record. So a lot of people, in fact, I know someone who worked at the National Personnel Records Center in the early 70s before the fire. And because of that, he was involved in having his father's record relocated into that vault on the 6th floor. And then 25, 30 years later, he's retired and he contacts me because his dad passed away and he needs a 214 for a funeral service. And when I go to look for it, because it wasn't an Army veteran, I think it was a Navy veteran, shouldn't have been burned in the fire. But when I did the research on it, I found that because you worked here in the 70s, you actually had his record moved to that vault on the 6th floor where it was burned. So it's not absolute, I guess my point is.
It's crazy.
It's usually going to be
So
Army.
the vault wasn't fireproof?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
I bet the new one is.
I bet the new ones are, yes.
Yeah, so the building was built by the Department of Defense. Army Corps of Engineers built that building, the one that burned. And they hired an architectural firm, and that firm did a requirements study for the new building. And they visited different facilities around the country that were used for storing large volumes of records. And they visited a Navy facility in Garden City, New York that had sprinklers in it. And they also visited a DOD facility in Alexandria, Virginia that did not. The Navy folks had the sprinkler systems. The DOD folks argued that the water was as big a threat, if not greater, than fire. And therefore, and that was probably because they were right on the shores of the Potomac and dealt with flooding all the time. And it was still being debated in the whole, archivist records management arena about, whether sprinklers made sense or not. But when that building was built, it was a deliberate decision not to equip it with sprinklers. By the 70s, the government got smarter, and it was a requirement to have sprinklers in the building, but it was grandfather clause. At the time that fire occurred, there were no sprinklers in that building. There's a number of other fire protection measures that were not in place in the 70s that are in place today as well.
Connect with the benefits you earned and deserve. Visit news.va.gov for current events, sign up for the Vet Resources e-newsletter, subscribe on YouTube for content like the SITREP and VR5, or follow VA on social media. Visit the video description below and get connected today.